Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm joined with MMA writer and lawyer Jason Cruz. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jake?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Obviously, you've been covering the antitrust lawsuit that the UFC have going against them. How would you be able to explain it?
Fortunately, we have some time, but basically, the lawsuit has was filed way back in 2014 by some former UFC fighters. As many know, Kung Lee is the named plaintiff, mainly meaning that he was the first guy in line in the naming of the lawsuit. But basically, they had filed the antitrust lawsuit. For for anti-competitive means of I'm sorry, the UFC had used anti-competitive means for procuring fighters and suppressing their rights, mainly related to fighter pay, as well as their image rights and things of that nature. Now, definitely the UFC can utilize their business however they want, but the fighters state in their lawsuit that they had illegally restrained their marketplace, the MMA fighters marketplace, to they used anti-competitive means to restrict the fighters' ability to earn money. So, in a nutshell, that is it. There's obviously tons of other tentacles out there that we could discuss related to the lawsuit, but that's the crux of it. As far as where it is right now, the judge in the case, Judge Richard Bulwer, a U.S. District Court judge, has finally granted class action certification. Now, class action certification allows for the fighters, not only Kung Lee and the 7 or 8 that are named in the lawsuit, but the class of individuals that fit in the umbrella that the plaintiffs had indicated in their lawsuit. They can now file the lawsuit as a class, not file, but basically be represented by the attorneys in the class against the UFC. The UFC, in turn, has petitioned the appellate court in the US, the appeals court, to hear the appeal by the UFC, basically saying that Judge Bulwer's um, decision on granting class action certification was not right. It was wrong. That they believe that legally the decision by Judge Bulbo was wrong. So the process for that is they have to petition the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then from there, the Court of Appeals has to accept their petition. Once the petition is heard, I mean, once the petition is either granted or denied, if it's granted, then the case goes to the Ninth Circuit, and then the judges on that level will hear the case. That will take some time because the parties will be able to file briefing to it. There will be oral argument, and then there will be some time for decision. So that's why I believe if the petition is granted, then it will go for another year or so before we even get back to the point where this case will be litigated in the U.S. District Court. Now, if the petition is denied, Ninth Circuit says no, we don't believe there's a need to review this case, then it shall go back down to the trial court, the Judge Bulwer, and then they litigate the case. From what I've understood, that the case is fast tracked for April. So meaning fast track is fancy word of saying we want it to be heard before other cases. And so meaning there's not going to be a lot of discovery, not a lot of back and forth regarding trading information. They just go straight to trial, which would be in April, which, even though this case has been hanging around since 2014, going to trial within like 5 or 6 months time is pretty fast. My opinion, and I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm sorry, but my opinion of this thing is that there's no way that this case is not going to be appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, one thing that I hadn't talked about is that if the petition is denied by the Ninth Circuit, then the other option the UFC can do is petition the U.S. Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the United States, to get emergency relief. However, that would be that's a long shot. That's basically a Hail Mary, and probably would not be granted by the U.S. Supreme Court. But again, I think this case is going to be appealed.
You talk about going to trial in April. Surely the UFC doesn't want to go to trial with it being a 50-50 chance of winning and losing.
Yes.
So
Yeah, the thing is, nobody wants to go to trial. Plaintiffs don't want to go to trial either. Everybody will say that they want to go to trial, but no one really wants to go to trial. Why? Because you don't know what decision the court will make. This isn't, I believe, a jury trial. I could look at that, but either jury or a bench trial. If it's a jury trial, it's just 12 people that will decide this. Ordinary U.S. citizens. Who knows what will happen? There's always issues at trial, even though the plaintiffs or the UFC can say that they have the correct evidence. If it's a jury trial with people, even if the evidence is shown, the people might decide based on whoever they like the most. So it's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot to basically say. The UFC definitely has issues because it does not want to go to trial and then be hit with a judgment and then have to pay that out or do settle or do something of the kind. It definitely has risks involved. Now the plaintiffs, they have risks as well. I'm far from saying that if this goes to trial, the plaintiffs are dead set on winning, because if they lose, they haven't been paid. I mean, if they lose, they have a lot on the line, and if they lose, the fighters don't get any money. The lawyers who've been working on this case for over 9-10 years will not see the ultimate payoff, and all the costs, all of the legal fees, everything will not be paid out by anyone. So if you're looking at the business standpoint from the plaintiffs, they are taking this on a commission. I guess you would say a commission basis. So basically, if they get $5 billion verdict, then they would get a portion of that. That's how they're getting paid, based on the judgment. They have been working out of pocket. The business has been fronting all this money all this time. So the hope is that at the end of this legal rainbow, there'll be a pot of gold for them, because they're all of the costs, all of the legal fees, all of that has been put on hold until this case is over.
you talk about the $5 million settlement. If, say, if the fighters do win, where would that money be distributed? You say the lawyers will get a certain percentage, but then would it go to their class action too?
Yeah. So yes. So what happens is, and since I'm in America, I'm used to this, but I'll try to explain it. So what happens is, let's assume there's a verdict, and the UFC does not appeal it, whatever. So you get a £5 billion or $5 billion, £5 billion verdict. The money will be then chopped up. So basically, a certain amount will go to the class. A certain amount will go to the costs of the litigation. A certain amount will go to the legal fees of the attorneys. Now, the court will decide the costs and legal fees for the attorneys. So usually that's hammered out and done expeditiously. There's not a lot of fighting over that. Now, the amount left will go to the class of fighters, and chopped up, it will go. The percentages will go based upon a sort of formula for the individual. So basically, everybody that's within the class that's decided to be represented and be a part of the class will get their certain percentages. Now, there's as far as that happens, you have to notify everybody in the class. So like they have to have I'm sure the plaintiffs have a list. The plaintiffs' attorneys have a list of the fighters that have an option of recouping the money, and they will let them know that they can receive X amount of money. So as far as how much it would be, in the end, it could amount to just what's equivalent to 50 pounds UK, or $1,000 US, based upon how much money they receive in a jury verdict. So again, that's another issue for the plaintiffs, just because what if you were offered a sum by the UFC not to go to trial, and then in the end you receive less in a jury verdict? You would just, that would be very, very disconcerting for those plaintiffs.
Well, you talk about if it's a settlement, maybe a fighter on the other side is getting offered from the UFC, from Dana White. How would they go about it? Would they just go straight to Dana, or would the lawyers be involved too?
Oh, in doling out the settlement money or
Yeah.
something like. Yeah. So basically, well, actually, let's think about this for a sec. That would be a very interesting thing, because it's not like you go to Dana's house and he gives you stacks of money. No, that's not how that would happen. I believe that the UFC at this particular time has insurance. So I assume that it would be doled out of some insurance fund. They would have to come into play. So there's another level that we haven't even got to yet, is the insurance. The people that are funding this with their insurance money, because at some point, insurance, if they're, I'm assuming this is that they have a policy covering these types of things, the UFC. If that happens, then the insurance attorneys will come in and evaluate the risk and discuss with the UFC how much they're going to cover, which could lead to another side issue. But if we are to assume, Jay, that this is the UFC as a company that has to pay a verdict, they will pay it just out of whatever money that whatever their company bank account or whatnot. It would be I don't know if they would do a structured settlement where they get a certain amount over time, or if they say they want let's say retirement policies for these, so the money will go into retirement policy. However it's structured, then that's how it would be paid. But yes, the company would have to pay at some on some level, whether it's through their insurance or whether they personally pay out the money.
As well as the antitrust lawsuit, you're a lawyer yourself. How hard is it to pass the bar in the US?
If I were to tell you, I have a joke for that, but here in the US, you have to go to law school 3 years. Most people, they go through a law school for 3 years, and then they take state bar exams. So every state has a bar exam, and then once you pass the bar, you are allowed to practice in that state. I'll give you, this is too much information for you perhaps, but I'll let you know. So in the state of Wisconsin, the US, you actually can go to a law school in that state and not have to take the bar. But but that's only limits you to that state. So if you wanted to practice in other states, you have to take their bar. Um, for this particular case, it's in Nevada. They have something called pro hoc vice, which is a Latin term, but basically, what that means is you can be licensed in the state, and then you could fill out a form and request that you practice in another state uh, without having to take the bar. And usually the courts will allow it. What it really requires is that they have a certificate of good standing from the other state, making sure that you haven't done anything illicit or anything illegal that would disqualify you from practicing.
When you was working as a lawyer, what state did you work in?
Yeah, so I am still a lawyer. I'm in Washington State, in the northwest part of America, and I do mainly copyright, trademarks, contracts, and I work with a lot of nonprofits, helping them, assisting them, and things that nonprofits do.
As well as being a lawyer, being an MMA writer, you've done a triathlon. How was that?
A triathlon?
Yeah.
Yes, I am actually going to do my fifth Ironman, as you see right there, um, this Saturday in Maryland, across the America, in Baltimore, Maryland. So those are very hard. Just like any athlete, I think you want to challenge yourself and your body and mind in doing it. So I find that something that's exhilarating. I like the competition. I like the challenge. So that's yeah, it's fun.
What part of the Ironman do you find the hardest?
The most anxious, I'll give you two. The most anxious is the swim, just because it's the first thing and it starts, and then you're swimming with a whole bunch of other people. Usually you're in a pool, so you have let lanes, but you get a thing where you have to have all these people next to you, so that's a little disconcerting and anxious. But that aside from that, the hardest part is definitely the bike, simply because it's the longest part. It's 112 miles, and that requires a lot of mental fortitude, because a lot of things can happen. I've had the wind could be really hard, blowing in your face. So you feel a stiff headwind. You can have flat tires. But I think that one of the things is that the hardest part is just that it's so long. 112 miles is very hard, and just a tip for anybody who wants to do it: just if you compartmentalize the stages of it, you can get through it. Just meaning, you just focus on 1 hour, and then the next hour, or for focus on the next 5 miles, that kind of thing. Then instead of thinking of it as a whole big chunk, your mind will be much more apt to be able to get through it.
Do you train for the specific bits, so like the cycling, the swimming, the running? Do you train for
Do I
all of
train
those?
what?
Do you train for
Yeah,
all
I
those
do.
different?
I have days where I do two things, either biking and running, or swimming and biking, or something like that. And then one day I will just focus on one thing, like a long bike ride, things like that, or long run, things like that.
As well as that Ironman stuff? UFC 293 was just in the rear mirror with Sean Strickland winning the belt over Israel Adesanya. What's your thoughts on that?
I am not a big Sean Strickland fan, but I think that he had a great game plan to go into that fight. And it's hard not to feel good for Sean Strickland in that moment. Definitely, he was a super underdog, simply because I thought Adesanya as a striker would be too quick for him. But I'm sure you saw it. I thought the game plan for Strickland was good, and I don't think that Adesanya had a good outing. Whatever happened to him, he just looked a little slow, and did not seem like he wanted to pull the trigger on his striking. And I definitely think that that first round where Strickland caught him really was set the tone for the rest of that fight.
Well, he's so strict and walk him down. It's the first person that's ever really done that to Israel.
Yeah, and that's why maybe Dana White was right in saying that Adesanya seemed a little slow. The Pereira fight where he lost seemed to be. It was still went Adesanya's way until that round where he got caught. But definitely, it seemed like it was dominated. I mean, you don't really see a champion dominated like that for 5 clear rounds. At least in the middleweight division, I'm sure. Wiley Zhang did dominate Carlos Esparza, but I mean, I think that for this particular weight division or whatnot, you don't see a guy like Strickland who's mainly just there to just stand and bang. I think that the metrics was like he rarely threw a kick. He just had jab and the right. And with that, he turned him, he closed on him, he made Adesanya tentative, and so Adesanya didn't seem like he wanted to engage in those fights. I mean, in those skirmishes.
How do you see a rematch going between the two? It looks like Dana's announced that they will be looking to do that.
I It's hard for me to think that it would go the same way. I definitely thought that in their rematch, Pereira was going to do much better than he did, but Adesanya came back. We'll see about the. I think the interesting part of this is that we're on the other side now of Adesanya's career, meaning that he's won the championship, he's lost the championship, he's won the championship, now he's lost it again. And does he have the fighter's mentality to come back from another setback and win the championship again? From Dana White's standpoint, I definitely think that a rematch is needed simply because Adesanya is still a needle mover for the UFC and pay-per-views. But this is gonna be really make or break one for Adesanya if once they come back. I know Daniel Cormier had floated the idea of maybe Adesanya just sit back, take another fight. There's definitely that kind of sit back and wait, but of course there's the issue of what if you wait too long or you lose your next fight. That's the other issue. So if you're Adesanya's management, you kind of think, well, you need to get back in there and fight Strickland. But the fight, I mean, that was total domination. I mean, I don't know if Adesanya had an injury that no one knows about, or he was just tentative, or something else was happening in his personal life. But there was nothing. If you're objectively thinking about it, there was nothing that I saw that would change in a rematch unless Izzy was injured.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time. Truly appreciate it. Thank you for
Thank you so
coming on.
much. One more thing, I do have a book out on Amazon, Mixed Martial Arts and the Law. It's a great little compilation about legal cases in the law. You guys could check it out right there on Amazon. Thank you, Jay, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on.
Okay.